Welcome on Point Blank, platform where we discuss issues confronting Africa. My name is Ricky Brown. I am your host. Corruption in Africa is known to destroy large portion of the continent's tax revenue, its gross domestic product, and even international aid. And this creates a strong deterrent for international investment. What are the common causes of corruption in Africa? Is corruption in Africa unique? And is there a possibility to stop or resist corruption in the first place? Digesting this issue, I have Mr. Dujinu Mekebo, a political analyst.
Yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Ekuyabu Apiaban, a radio hostess and business entrepreneur.
Thank you.
And Prince Achampo, Mr. Prince Achampo, a medic with special interest in Africans development. Welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Corruption, according to IMF, is commonly defined as using public resources for personal or private gains. Starting from you, Prince, what are the common causes of corruption in Africa?
Well, thank you very much. Knowing very well that my fellow panelists might want to come from the political angle, I would like to examine this via the biopsychosocial sort of model. Well, corruption, as Charles Darwin said in his book, In the Origin of Species, competition is what's brought us to where we are today. And we do things through competing amongst ourselves and competing against others. And through that, we tend to learn and gain a lot. But competition, in a way, makes us selfish. And Richard Dawkins once said that humans, we need to teach humans how to be generous and selfless, because inherently our genes are corrupt and selfish. So I think humans as we are, naturally, we are corrupt. And so we need to tackle that first before even tackling...
So corruption runs in the blood of African man's blood.
Of all humans. Point number two is the cultural diversity that exists in Africa makes it very hard for any government to form a social fabric between these various factions within a particular country. Knowing very well that when somebody comes in power, because they need to satisfy every sort of cultural group, they tend to give out positions based on the culture, your background, what culture you belong to. And sometimes people don't really, people get positions that they don't have the know-how to run. And my third point is Transparency International, a group that is attached to Transparency International, did a research and came up with the conclusions that if a government doesn't really obtain its revenue from the people in the country, they tend not to be accountable to them. And so, you know, that really contributes a lot to corruption, because if I don't, you know, at the end of the day, I don't show you how I spend the money, I don't show you what every pound or penny.
But these governments in Africa don't intend showing accountability to anyone or the people who donated the money in the first place.
Well, maybe they do. And sometimes they don't really need to, because they give them, there are strings attached to some of the monies they give them. They have to make sure certain things are done within the country. That might not be what the people in the country want. And finally, my last point is, I've titled that, be good to thy neighbor, but not too much. Because what tends to happen is, because some of these African countries get most of the money they use in the country, the governments get most of the monies they use in the countries are from donor nations. And so, at the end of the day, whether or not you try to insult or say whatever you want to them, they know that one day the money is going to come from somewhere else. So why do I even have to listen to you?
Okay, thank you for
so
that.
all
that
these really contribute immensely towards corruption.
Thank you. Mrs. Urban, what are the common causes, some of the common causes of corruption in Africa?
Thank you. Some of the common causes, or should I say, the root causes for corruption in Africa was inherited from our colonial masters. And so Africa was founded on a corrupt plate. Because the way it was carved, the way we were all joined in according to a line, meant you're talking to a next door neighbor who does not speak your language, eat your food, do things in common with. And through that, they passed on to those who were ready to have independence, like Ghana. Ghana was not ready for the independence, but it was necessary to have the independence. And because we didn't tread carefully and learn, and they also knew what they were giving to us, we fell into the ditch. And by falling into the ditch, all that the leaders could do was just do what they can, corrupt, bring in people who are not qualified. Those who are qualified were minorities, and looking down on those who do not know, using different languages to speak to people, governing on different issues that does not reflect. And so that means the majority of the people cannot question confidently. And so they do things with impunity and do not care, because at the end of the day, nobody can question them. And that is why we're going on. And also, Prince mentioned something. The fact that we are not responsible for our resources, the prices. We don't negotiate for our goods. Cocoa, we don't use cocoa. It's the West who uses cocoa. Even the gold, where they came and met us using our gold for ourselves, we were discouraged. And so they did a good job by discouraging us to make their lifestyle superior, their language superior, their religion superior, to look up to them. And by looking up to them means forever we will serve them. And by serving them means we will forever be corrupt. And that is the root cause. And so no matter how good intentions any government may have, IMF is looking in. The West is looking in. And they will write about us as corrupt. Corrupt is also here in the West, but in a different matter.
Right, okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Aben. Mr. Numekebo, from the political perspective, what are some of the common causes of this deadly canker in Africa?
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to take the causes from the definition you gave me, the IMF definition.
Right.
But before I do that, I should like to react very quickly to some of the things excuse me, Mrs. Aban said. You see, we really need to be careful not to blame people for
Our actions.
For our actions. You started off by defining corruption as using public resources for personal gain.
That's right.
Why would a responsible African say that, look, the reason why I am stealing public resources for my personal gain is because of the West? Does that make sense? It doesn't. Now, you see, one of the biggest causes of corruption in Africa is because we have not been able to find creative ways of generating wealth for our people. Everybody else depend on the national kitty. Okay, the private sector is not developed. We don't know how to create wealth for the teeming masses on the streets. So everybody think that the only way they can make money is to come into government and dip their hands into the national kitty. Once you have that arrangement, you are very likely to have people who will be corrupt. The second issue why people are corrupt is that because, as Prince said, people are inherently want to be corrupt. They wouldn't want to create checks in the system to bind them. And once you have weak institutions, weak systems, weak mechanisms, a weak police force, weak law enforcement, people will definitely be corrupt because they know that, look, there is no other way you are going to find out anyway. Okay. The other cause of corruption in Africa is because I'd rather link it to the point Prince made earlier about ethnicity, culture, and all of that.
Right.
Because you see, if in Africa, when people have their brothers in positions of trust and they hold public offices, they don't want to question them for whatever they do. Okay, so
Well,
you can
but
still,
it turns
so
that
you
they
can-
themselves want to depend on their relatives who are in position to
that-
get some gains.
Exactly.
Give me some contracts. Give me this and that,
that
and
is
so
the
on.
point. So you dip your hands in the kitty and give it to your countrymen, your tribemen. And when all is said and done, you realize that the electorate are not even in the position to question these politicians and public office holders when the time comes for elections. You see, the difference between corruption in the West and corruption in Africa, as Mrs. Aban mentioned, is that if a politician is corrupt, if he takes state money here in the UK and the electorate get to know, chances are that he will be voted out in the next election. But what happens? The opposite happens in Africa. People are corrupt, they get away with it. At the next election, they are voted for.
Right.
So there is really no motivation at all on their part to stop being corrupt.
Right, and let me start off from you again. Can corruption in Africa be blamed on bad governance as well then?
Well, but corruption in itself is a remnant, is a product of bad governance. You see, as I said earlier, once you have weak institutions, once you don't have anybody question you, that in itself is bad governance.
Right.
Good governance, you only have good governance when you have an educated electorate who are well informed and can read between the lines and they question you. When you have things like that, then you say, okay, now I have good governance. If you don't have such things in place, then you have bad governance, and then it leads on to corruption. Did you go where I'm coming from?
Right.
So the two are intertwined, they are linked, corruption and bad governance. So corruption is a product of bad governance. And once you have bad governance in Africa, you are likely to have corrupt leaders,
Right.
corrupt public office holders.
Thank you very much for that crucial point. Mrs. Aban, coming to you. Do you think the corruption in Africa is so unique than the corruption in the West or any part of the world? Because you can say Africa is only country only continent which is corrupt. There are corruption going on everywhere in part of the world, but the ones in Africa, is it too obvious or is it too unique? What makes it different from other part of the world?
The difference between corruption in Africa and here is that Africa is still developing. And so everything you take affects the people directly. Over here, their forefathers went and did the homework and brought the resources here to support the system that we have here. We don't have that. And so it's going to need dedicated people who care, wanting to give, wanting to leave a legacy for Africa to understand that you cannot eat it all. You need to pass on to the generation. And so the corruption in Africa is not different to here. Probably they are more corrupt than us. But we need to develop. And that is why we have to take corruption seriously.
Yeah.
Because we haven't started at all developing.
And to add to what Mrs. Aban said,
Right.
you see, it's one of the very lame excuses that people put up when you ask them that how do we tackle corruption in Africa. Now, you see, if I ask you that, look, why haven't you swept your home? And you tell me that I didn't sweep it because you didn't sweep your home.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Right.
You see, now she said
Your
she made
home
a,
is different
she,
from my home.
home. The point, you see, a couple of years ago, I read an article. The article came up in the newspapers when Britain was considering cutting back aid to Africa. The critical question they were asking themselves at the point was that, why are we throwing monies at leaders who are corrupt? Why are you funding corruption? Why are you feeding people who are stealing money? I think it's a valid point. Now, she made the point that when you started off, you said that corruption is eating so much deep into the GDPs of African countries.
Right.
It is making people poor.
And it's even is creating a deterrent for foreign investors to come in.
You see, so the point we have to look at here is that comparatively, the West and Africa, where in the world, which is the poorest?
Obviously, it's
Okay,
Africa.
so yes, I mean, let's even assume, let's proceed on the point that every country, everybody is corrupt. In as much as the people in the UK, for example, are corrupt, they are able to provide monies week in, week out for people who are not working. In Africa, more than 70% of the people live below the poverty line. They cannot afford 3 square meals a day. So if you are telling me I'm corrupt, as in the West, they are telling you that, yeah, but in as much as I'm corrupt, I'm able to look after my people. What about you?
Right,
You are
and,
not.
and
You-
then just something just came on my mind with one of the Nigeria's state governors who been arrested recently, named James Obori.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Look at the amount of money this guy stole. You can't compare it to the MP scandals that happened here recently, like not a couple of years ago. The MPs were like £5,000, 15,000, but this guy is
That goes
actually
to buttress
stealing
the point.
billions of dollars.
That goes to buttress the points that I'm making. You see, go to Nigeria, okay, and look at the kind of water people drink, and weigh it, juxtapose that with the amount of money that Ibori had in his account. That should tell you how deep corruption is eating into the canker, into the fabric of the Nigerian society. I'll give you another example. In 2008, Britain gave Lesotho. Lesotho is a monarch, okay. Britain gave Lesotho aid amounting to nearly 60 million pounds. That very year, the king of Lesotho married 12 women.
Wow, that's
That
interesting.
came up to that came up to 12 million pounds, which means that nearly 1/3
of
the
their donation,
money of the donation
is gone
went
into.
this thing.
And was that not a plan? Because this is why I said.
Meanwhile, in Lesotho, nearly 70% of the people are living on less than $1 a
That
day.
was a plan, because why donate to a country who can look after herself? Africa can look after herself, but we've been brought up to be dependent on the West.
But
And by doing that,
Mrs. Aban, that is where
African leaders always begging the West and America for help.
That is
Even if they say they're going to cut the aid they give to Africa, the African people will be like, no, we need this money. We have to do
they
this.
need it because
but
it's not
when
used
the
for
money,
what
when
it's
the donation
supposed-
is given,
They need it because it's not used for what it's supposed to be used for. Because if the West actually want to help, they will not give the money into an account without showing what is being used for.
well, every donation
we
that
need-
they give, every money that the African countries borrow, the West don't just give them the money. They actually come with a proposal. They tell them this is what we're going to use the money for, but they
Does
ever
it happen?
end up. It doesn't happen.
doesn't
It
happen.
doesn't
And so
happen.
it's good for the
It
West.
doesn't happen because
It's
these
good for the
donations
West.
we get should be distributed from the bottom up instead of top to bottom. So they should go to the ground, see who needs it most, what they need on the ground, and then distribute it from there rather than giving to government for government to distribute. That's
Well,
even
but
on
the
side.
person at the
I'd like
bottom,
to-
the person
I'd like
at the
to touch
bottom
on-
doesn't even have a passport, let alone to get on the plane to come to, let's say, for example,
Well,
Britain to
well,
ask for
it all-
donation
it-
from
it-
some,
it should all
somewhere.
come. It should all come with the package. So if you're giving Ghana money, you're giving Nigeria money. It's if you really want to help the people, go to Delta State, go to the smallest village in Delta State. Okay, stay there, get your people on the ground, ask them what's needed in that area. Dozie mentioned people not having good drinking water. Make boreholes for them instead of giving to government for government to make the boreholes. That's not even the point I'm trying to make. The point I want to make is to touch on the question you asked earlier. Is corruption in Africa different from corruption here in Europe? Of course it will be. Because look, we've now adopted democracy to be the best form of governance for us as Africans. And if you look at democracy, the only way we elect our presidents are through elections.
Right.
And electioneering campaigns are so expensive. Because imagine fighting against an incumbent government who is already corrupt. He's already amassed
But
all the money.
Hold on. Talking
Right.
about the election campaigns and so on.
Yes.
You are learning, for example, from the West.
We are learning from the West,
But you being
We
here
were
in
brought up by
Britain,
the West.
when you being here in Britain, do you
Yes.
see the kind of campaign that goes on in Africa? Do you see
Because-
Britain doing
because-
that?
because
This is the person
they-
you are learning from, and is that how they do their campaigns?
That's not how they do we need to get there. But the way to get there is where the problem is. Of course, we can't say we are waiting till we get all the structures in place before we can organize elections. We need to find a way to get there by doing it slowly and learning at the same time. Now, if I'm an opposition party and I want to compete against an incumbent government, I need to compete, I need to campaign. And now, all these campaigns, we need money to fuel it. Now, we go to individuals within the country who are already corrupt, and so they have so much money. They give these opposition leaders monies to help them run their campaigns. If you're taking from an already corrupt individual, or let's say an organization within the country that has already been corrupted by a corrupt government in the first place, what tends to happen is they make sure that once you're in power, you give them
pay back.
monies.
All right, okay.
And then, as part of that, make rules that make sure they don't fall within the laws or the laws that every single individual.
Okay, thank you for that point. Mr. Numekabo.
You see, the thing is that Britain, the UK is not less corrupt because they send money to the people at the local level. No. You see, to stop corruption, what about if the people at the local level are also corrupt? How do you stop that?
But do it first.
You see,
Divide it first.
See, look, we have somehow a decentralized system. Now, see the point.
From political point of view, looking at this from political lenses, how are we? What are we supposed to do to stop corruption?
If
there's a possibility,
stopping corruption starts with the people. It starts with the will not to steal. Okay, people would have to come to the point where they say, look, we need to use monies to develop the country. We need to use monies meant for development to better the lot of the people. That is one of the ways you can stop corruption. But you see, when you have a system where everybody else wants to live beyond their means, and there are no checks in the system, there is nobody to enforce the laws, whether you send the money to the local level or it's at the national level or at the regional level, they will still be corrupt. In fact, in Ghana, for example, or even Nigeria runs a federal system of government where power is not concentrated at the national level.
Right.
Okay.
Decentralization.
That is decentralization.
active.
I mean, in fact, the government votes money for the federal states, and it goes all the way down where they are supposed to raise their own budgets for development and all the thing. But it's one of the most corrupt countries on earth.
Right.
The point I'm making is that, you see, when the MP scandal broke in this country, it was a scandal that involved MPs in this country. But the electorate said, well, I mean, if you don't deal with this problem, you're going to pay a very heavy price at the polls. The MPs themselves came out and said, look, guys, we really need to do something about this. So they tightened the rules for expenses.
But can that happen in Africa?
That is the
People
point.
tighten the rules to catch themselves in the
So that's
trap?
the point I'm making. If people will have to make up their mind that we do not want to be corrupt.
It's not the people. It must start from the top.
I
Because
believe
let me finish this.
You
see, if a government has increased the electricity by 50-something%, and you depending on the civil servant to be honest, you're going on with people. If you're depending on a person to be not corrupt, and my electricity overnight has gone up to 57%, do you expect me not to take anything under the table?
Now, you see, that's the point I'm making. That you see, the issue about electricity going up.
Electricity is an example.
It's an example.
The way things are done from the top is what I'm talking about.
But you see, in this country, who determines the interest rates in this country? Is it not the central bank?
Of course.
Now, you see, if interest rates would have to go up, they will have to go up. If inflation would have to go up, it has to go up. But the decision to
gradual.
Whether it's gradual,
Not a high jump.
We are not whether it's gradual or
skyrocketed.
it has gone up anyway. Is that not
Right.
the case?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if it's gone up, it does not mean if they raise interest rates or inflation goes up in this country, do people go stealing? No. Now, even if you try to steal because the interest rates have gone up, the system would find you out and you would be put behind bars.
We will come to that. We will put behind the bus. Prince, let me allow you to make a quick point. But before we go on a commercial break, do you think there's a possibility to resist corruption at all? Because in the case of one moment, the case of Abori, which I was saying, the one task force officer who was involved,
Yes,
he was literally offered $15 million in cash.
Of course.
Take it and leave me. Take it and let me slip
he
through the
rejected
net.
it, didn't he?
But he rejected. Do we have those sort of people in Africa
that's why-
dealing with corruption?
That's why I wanted to come in, because comparing UK and Africa is quite grandiose, in the sense that this country has practiced this over and over again. They started doing this, going through the similar situations even before we gained independence. And so they have well-established structures in place that look at people even when they leave power, and so they will never be poor. And so there's even no need to amass wealth anyway. But what I'm trying to say here, that look, it's already started. If you look at Nuhi Badu, the guy in Nigeria, he rejected the money that was offered to him. That got this man arrested. Now, if you look at what Anas is doing in Ghana, he's really doing really well. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is, let's try and form a strong opinion against corruption, because it's already been established that inherently our genes are corrupt. The only way we can stop that is having educated group of individuals reminding people that, look, as Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. And excellence is a habit and not an act. Let's constantly make that noise. Let's constantly say to them, like, look, we know about what you're doing. We know all the deals you are doing behind closed doors. We are aware, and we don't like it. Okay, let's point fingers at people.
Let's name and shame the
yeah,
people.
Who
Yeah.
get into the act and the actors. And now when we see them, let's pick them up.
All right.
Teach them to serve as deterrent.
All right,
So
okay.
people don't.
All right, okay. Thank you very much for that point. We have to go for commercial break, viewers, and we'll be right back.
Life is an adventure. Sometimes we climb, at times we descend. Sometimes we smile, at times we frown. We laugh sometimes and we cry. These are all the events of life. And we document these events to tell the stories of our life, of where we were and how far we've travelled. Chris Vick Entertainment is a video production company that can capture these events of life and package it on a DVD, be it wedding, christening, birthday, or funeral. Give us a call on 079577 88401 and you'll be glad you did.
Welcome back from the commercial break. Corruption is a major hindrance to the development of Africa. Now, what do we do to offend this if they are caught? Starting this, Mrs. Saban, what do you think we should do to offend this if they land on the hot soup?
Name them, shame them, seize their assets, pictures everywhere.
Be on the buses, on the
Buses,
street?
instead of the president plastering former presidents and himself in color, use corrupt people. Like, if you ask me who is Wyoming, I don't know him. I don't know his picture. I may meet him by the railway station and speak to him as an honest Ghanaian. But if they are shown pictures everywhere, going to schools, people will see. And it should also be taught. We need to catch them young. Children should understand that corruption does not help. Corruption will make it sound attractive. It's thieving. You thief. You are a thief. You are an armed robber. That's full stop. Because from your actions, children will die. People will not be able to go to school. Hospitals will not be built. Roads
Pregnant
will
women
not be
will even
constructed.
lose their lives.
Yes. So you
Just
are
because
a
there's
killer.
no common oxygen to
Yes.
save their life in the
Yes.
hospital due to someone else's greediness.
That's it. And so all this should link to those who are being corrupt. So it's not just that your neighbor is now in this new wealth and you can go there for a bottle of beer, so it makes it okay. We need to make them understand that the person who is giving you the beer, money was stolen. That was your money. So why should you sit and pray and hope for a better life. Whereas one person is spending your money. And come election, they come and pay your child's school fees. They come and pave your road overnight. And then they leave you for 4 years. So we need to break it down for people to understand that the new money that comes in are their money. And it's their right.
Right. Thank you very much. Shame them, name them, shame them. That's a very beautiful point. Mr. Numekevo, from the political point of view, tell me, if these people are caught, what do you think we do to them? Because what happened is, even if someone is actually corrupted and in position in Africa, the law itself happens to give them immunity. So we can't even take them to court and try them.
Yeah, then that means that clearly the law is selective, okay, when it comes to punishing people. It shouldn't be so, okay. When people do wrong, the law must be all encompassing. It shouldn't discriminate. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You must be punished. Now, with corruption, we shouldn't only plaster people's names on buses, and that is not to say it's not a good solution. I mean, we shouldn't only name and shame, but we should make it impossible for people who steal state monies not to enjoy the wealth.
How do we make that impossibility? Tell me.
It comes back to law enforcement. So, you see, in much more developed economies, okay, if monies, illegal monies is found in your account, the state confiscates it. Simple as that. So, but you see, what happens in Ghana is that someone steals money, they are corrupt, and then, well, they are put behind bars for 2-3 years. They come back and then they enjoy all the wealth. As Mrs. Aban said, we need to make corruption as serious as cocaine, dealing with cocaine. I mean, when the lady who was caught smuggling cocaine to this thing, I hear her assets have been confiscated and all of that. We need to attach the same.
But for example, Mrs. Aban just mentioned the name of Wyoming. This guy has been he's been caught, taken to court. He still walked free. He still kept the money. The law hasn't dealt with him.
Exactly.
That's not him only. It's all over Africa. All over Africa.
Yeah. That is the point. You see, corrupt people in Africa, most of them are doing this with the connivance of the politicians, of public office holders, of politicians. Years after, the Supreme Court has said that Woyome should refund the monies to the state. He's still playing hide and seek with the law.
Do you think he would be playing hide and seek if his pictures were all over the country?
Yeah, he would do it.
That means the law in the country is not effective.
Exactly. And who makes the law? You see, the politicians have deliberately decided not to make the law work.
Because they are thieves.
You see, yes, of course. You see, Mrs. Aban, we need to get this thing clear, okay? The fact that probably it is you who doesn't know Woyome. A lot of people in Ghana know Woyome. And his
right,
name,
let's not base our argument on him. Africa
I'm saying that, you see, for the point I'm making is that, you see, we are making corruption too attractive.
It is attractive.
Okay, so you plaster people's name all over there.
profitable.
I mean, when Ibori was caught, his name was in the tabloids in Nigeria, in London, and everywhere. Everybody, that's the man who stole the existing money. But he's out of prison. Probably his mansion is still there. And you see, they are smart. What they do is that they give money. They have all these boys around who they give money to. They sponsor a lot of people.
So they register properties in people's
and
name and
so
so on.
Even when you do it, they can't be bothered. Look, recently, I mean, a couple of years ago, there was this MP in Ghana who was caught with cocaine in America.
Eric
Amwate.
That's right.
Go to this thing. He has big farms. He has employed people all over the place. The day he got back to Nkranza, people were jubilating that, oh, our man is back. That is too attractive to be a thief.
Okay, all right. So, Prince, from the psychosocial point of view,
yes.
Tell me, what do you think we do to people if they are caught in corrupting activities?
Well, interestingly, my fellow panel members have actually said a lot. But one thing we are forgetting here is in Africa, actually giving alms to our family members and people living within our communities is something we celebrate. Sometimes even people don't ask where you got the money from, but they'll take it. Now, what I want Africans to do is the fact that everyone should be aware of the fact that corruption is a serious crime and you wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. Now, if somebody is being investigated for a crime as serious as corruption, that person shouldn't even be allowed to stand for a public position. Like some of these ministers we have there, it's been mentioned about them that years ago they were involved in certain activities that were seen as being part of corruption, and they were still voted into power. What I want as a social analyst, or call me whatever, is anybody who is seen being part of a corrupt activity should be arrested.
Right.
It shouldn't be just the person who committed the crime or who took the money. Whoever enjoyed the money should be arrested, knowing very well that look.
What happened to the asset? Do we just arrest them and
confiscate the asset?
Right.
Confiscated. And look, people like Isophoton that KK mentioned last time we were on this panel. The courts ordered them to pay back the money. I mean, people who actually gave the money to Isophoton, they should be answerable. If you're a person occupying position and you paid money to somebody knowing very well that the person hasn't done the job and the person took the money,
and you are aiding and abetting.
You who took the money must be arrested. The person who did the payment must be arrested and investigated. Every single individual who was part of the deal is answerable.
To add to what Prince is saying.
Right.
To add to what
Prince is saying.
You see, the whole thing is starting from the top. Okay. Now, the reason why there's so much corruption in the system is that the electorate, the voters, they are not even in a position to punish the politicians.
They're corrupt too.
For corruption.
So everyone is corrupt in Africa.
Yeah, everyone is corrupt because you see, not everyone. I wouldn't even say that the voters are corrupt because you see, let me tell you, my grandmother votes, but she doesn't even know what she is voting for or who she is voting for. Probably she votes because I tell her, oh yeah, grandma, vote for this person or vote for that person. So she is not corrupt.
Do you think so?
Yeah, oh yes, of course. My grandmother, what has she taken? She hasn't taken anything that belongs to the state. But the point I'm making is this: you see, we need to educate her. There should be civic education to the point where she votes because this man is upright and the other person is a thief. At the moment, she doesn't know. She's only voting because I tell her, oh, vote for this person. She's not corrupt because she hasn't taken anything belonging to the state. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's a no-brainer. And the Transparency International also mentioned that it's costing up to about $150 billion a year. If you go to a place like Angola, okay, the daughter of the president, who is, I think, 20-year-old, is the youngest female millionaire in the country. How is that possible?
Joke, yeah.
And she made all her money through the diamond mines and the telecommunication network in the country. Now,
so how does that affect the ordinary citizen?
If you go to Angola, it's been mentioned that Angola is the most dangerous place for a kid to grow up to the age of 7 years, because if you're sick, there are no emergency services in the country for you to take your kid to. Schools, they don't have decent classrooms, they don't have decent drinking water. The money sitting in this girl's account alone can go a long way. Like, if they decide to share this money, every single individual in the country can get up to a year's worth of money that can feed them for a whole year. And this money is sitting in this woman's account, and this girl is only 20 years old. How is that possible? If you go to a place like Nigeria, go to the Delta State. Delta State is a place where they mine oil day in, day out. Look at the communities in which people live. If the money is sitting in the accounts of these individuals, if they decide to put it into something good for these people, they wouldn't even think of, moving from Delta State to, if you like, Ibadan or wherever. They will stay in the community and they will be good.
Mr. Silban, what are the consequences of corruption to the ordinary citizen of Africa?
The consequences that I see is that we all behave like children, forever begging, forever blaming, forever going to church, mosques, depending on the invisible, because our mindset is so fixed that because we believe that no matter what you do, things will not happen. We don't have a good housing structure. We don't have good education system. No health care system. Employment is nil. And so the mindset of the people is to go to church and pray. I'm a Christian. But the way we respond to religion is frustrating, because they don't go in there to have a proper understanding to religion and spiritualism. They go in there hoping that somebody will do me a favor.
Well, if it happens that, don't you think it's the system that's frustrating the people to become that sort of Christian religion?
Yes, the system that has caused that for the people to behave that. Because if you compare to other countries here in England, the most prominent buildings are the churches. It started in that way, but because things were done for the people, people are now dealing with spiritualism and Christianity as a choice, not because I have to go there if in case something happens, then my church people will take care of me. So the church is now a subsidy instead of the government putting proper housing system and infrastructure.
I just even don't want to go there, because the church itself is questionable when it comes to corruption.
Yes.
There is corruption taking place in
ordinary
churches.
person
and
does
so on.
not know that.
You see, we need to.
What are the effects of
effects of
corruption
as
on
Prince said,
ordinary
it's
African citizens?
It's a no-brainer. You see, go to most African countries.
Right.
I mean, Ebola broke out somewhere last year, and it had to take the West to send in simple medication just to curb Ebola. Malaria is killing people on a daily basis because they cannot afford treated mosquito nets. Now, when you compare this to the situation where thousands, millions of pounds or dollars, okay, are stashed away in personal bank accounts of some of these Western leaders in safe havens
African
like
leaders.
African leaders in Cayman Islands and all of that, then you realize that directly or indirectly, corruption is the single most biggest killer in Africa. Okay, because I mean, how much is a mosquito net? How much is the cost of importing drugs to treat Ebola? So when you take that money is meant for treating all of that, and you take it for your personal use, and people are dying.
But
indirectly,
so do you think the politicians or the people in public office places doing corruption activities, which in turns make people die, so do you think they feel guilty, they feel bad about it? Do they have that conscience?
They wouldn't start it.
well, they wouldn't even start it in the first place if they had a conscience, isn't it? So, I mean, how would they even go into deal with their conscience or all of that? I mean, you know, when people want to do bad, they already see it their conscience anyway. So it's not a matter of conscience, okay? It is just greed, selfishness that is driving them to do whatever they're doing, okay? So the effect, I mean, go walk on the streets of any African country and you see people begging for arms when the country has so much. Prince mentioned Angola. Angola belongs to OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So why should the people be poor?
Right.
Why should living conditions for people on the streets of Luanda be that dire when the country has so much? So
that means and the effect of corruption on ordinary African citizen is really appalling, and it's not awesome at all.
Acceptable.
Okay, so coming to this point of our conversation, Mrs. Aban, starting up from you, what do you think is the way forward? What should African countries do to overcome this deadly canker?
What African countries do need to start saying, is it fight is the word or what? To overcome corruption is to start by having housing system, education system, put infrastructures in place, and also the judiciary that people do not have confidence in should be revamped.
But do you think there's a need for every government in Africa to set up like a task force to literally monitor every ruling government and then see this money we got from here, this money we generated from here, this money we got from this donor, and the money are exactly put into good use for the benefit of the people?
It's important, but if the judiciary is not strong enough, people will still commit crime and not fearing that something can be done to them. So we need to have that in place. People should understand that if I do something, I'll be punished. Because systems are not in place, full stop. The reason people over here, ordinary people, do not want to be corrupt, civil servants and all, is that they have responsibilities.
So you reckon
Housing,
we should
mortgages,
strengthen our judiciary system in the first place?
and infrastructures to rebuild the communities? Because I had a WhatsApp last week, a woman cooking in an open yard, children sitting by. All that should be removed by having a proper housing system. People working, knowing that they have something to lose. Gender equality. One man, one wife. So that you be responsible.
One man, one wife.
One man, one wife, one family. Because all that is corrupt.
So do you think if a man have more than 2 wives, that
they will be corrupt?
Okay.
Because
right.
you need more money to maintain the house.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. One man, one wife. Prince, in your opinion, what do you think African countries should do to stop this corruption?
I think African countries need to understand that, well, leaders mostly, I usually say African leaders are rubbish anyway, but the thing is, these leaders need to understand that, look, the land Africa doesn't belong to a single individual. Okay, we are just custodians. We are looking after the land, not even for our children, but for our children's children. Okay, they need to understand that being given the mandate to rule a country is not because you are such a kind person that you can make decisions based on your gut feelings, but because you are there to make timely and difficult decisions to help so that the children of our children can also come and inherit the land. So they need to first of all be aware of the fact that so many people in the country are suffering, and that instead of
not aware.
Well, they are aware, but they need to take a step back, have a look at themselves. Whenever any public individual is voted into power, take a step back and step aside your personal feelings as an individual and see what you can do for others. Okay. Now, to try and answer this based on some of the points I made earlier, instead of more or less thinking that, oh, we're going to receive foreign donation to help us build certain things or for educational sector or whatever, let's look within ourselves and within our countries and say, look, okay, collecting tax from our own people, we need the money to solve certain problems. Now, whoever is being charged with maybe the poll tax system or the VAT system or whatever, we should start making those people whose positions we don't vote on, those people who are permanently occupying those roles, we should hold them accountable. If you hold them accountable, they will be able to collect these taxes and keep the money and make sure that at the end of the day, they can account to people's imposition, like if it's the ministry or whatever. We know if you go to this department, this amount of money has been collected from the people. If the people within the community know that they are paying their taxes and the taxes they are paying needs to make the educational sector good enough, make sure we have water, good drinking water, make sure we have, good roads.
Okay.
Then that expectation will cause our leaders to be accountable. But if they are not paying and they know they are not being asked to pay, then if they don't account to us, we don't even care.
All right. Okay. All right.
And we need education. People need to be educated.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Numekebo, in your opinion, looking at this from a political point of view, what do you think African countries should do to stop corruption? Do we need to set up task forces to police every government? Do we have to be done by the government itself, or should it be an individual corps doing that? And even I was about to ask as well, with the emergence of technology like WhatsApp and social media, is that helpful in stopping this?
Thank you. I'll take it from where Prince said about education. You see, the African voter would have to be educated about the things they need to look out for before voting for politicians. Okay, so that it comes back to education. You educate them that, look, if the politician does this and this and that, they must not be voted for. If they do this, and they do the other thing, they must be voted for. So we set the parameters clear. So it comes back to the issue of voter education. Who does the voter education? The education must be done by civil society organizations, because if you leave that to the politicians, they want to take advantage of the people anyway. So they won't do it. They won't do the education. It is like, look, I want to educate you so that you vote me out. They won't do it.
They won't do it.
Okay?
And then what else again?
The reason why education is very key is that, you see, we need to treat the politicians like the way as customers we treat business owners. The biggest check on the businessman is his or her customer. So the businessman knows that, look, if I mess around with my customers, I'm going to lose business and I'm going to go hungry. Okay? We need to bring the voters to the point where the politicians will be afraid of them. To the point where
what about making governing bodies in Africa transparent, making every activities that they do open to the people?
It comes back. If you leave that to the politicians, they won't do it. I'll give you a typical example. You see, in Ghana, the constitution makes provisions for the office of the Attorney General. The Attorney General is also the Director of Public Prosecution. He initiates prosecutions against people who are deemed to have committed crimes against the state, especially corruption. Okay, for years, civil society organizations have been saying that, look, separate these two offices, make the Attorney General the chief legal advisor to government, and create another office for the prosecutor who is independent to bring prosecution against public office holders who are deemed to have been corrupt. For years, the politicians won't do that. Why? Because it's like, I want to
come back and then bite
hand them. So if you leave that to them, they'll do it. So that is one of the things. Civil society organizations have to be strengthened to fight corruption. The voters would have to be educated. You also mentioned social media
networks, if they can help in cutting down corruption.
That's very brilliant. It's one way we can further the cause of education. Like, we need to tell people that, look, if you see this, send it to this one, and then it becomes an issue. And if the politician, you see, once the politicians realize that there is a groundswell of public opinion rising up against them, they will stop what they are doing.
Okay. Prince, just give us your final word, and then let's come to the conclusion of this discussion.
As a medic, I mean, the well-being of the people in the country is my utmost concern. And I think the politicians we have in Africa, they do know exactly what they need to do to curb corruption, but they don't want to do it.
It doesn't benefit them.
Why? Because it doesn't benefit them. Now, I just want to use this media to beg them, to tell them that, look, please, these lands are not for you. Please hold these positions in such a way that our children's children can one day say, oh, that man held that position, and I'm so proud of the fact that he held that position because he's made me who I am today. If African leaders can do that, then corruption will be solved.
Right. Okay, thank you very much for that point. And Mrs. Saba, your final word.
We need to promote those who do well in our communities, because most of the people in Africa are corrupt because of poverty. So if somebody is going to give you something to survive, you take it. And so we need to have quality housing reforms, land reforms, family planning, gender equality, decentralization, to make people accountable locally. And by doing that, the power would not be so attractive at the top. And once we do that and educate the people, particularly the women, they will be able to take care of the children, and the children will have better environment and can survive. But as we see it now, we haven't started, and we need to start from somewhere.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Aben. Mr. Numekebo, your final word?
Well, how do we do that? We need to educate the voter, to let them know that, look, if someone is corrupt, vote them out. Once we get the politicians to be afraid of the voters, they will stop being corrupt. The other way we can stop corruption is to develop the private sector. You define corruption as using public resources
For private
gains. So you don't go into office to make money. If you can make money in the private sector, why not go into the private sector and make money? The likes of Richard Branson and all the big people, they are not in government, but they are making money in the private sector. So there is no point going to public office to go make money. So we need to make the private sector attractive so that people are not attracted to public office just to go make money. This is what I think will be some of the things that would help get corruption.
All right. Well, viewers, we have to come to an end of our discussion about corruption. Tebo Imeki once said, as Africans, we need to share a common recognition that we all stand to lose if we fail to transform our continent. Myself, my honorable panelists, and the hardworking production crew behind the cameras, we think and we reckon it's about time we all work together and transform our continent. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next episode.